Hey, everybody. In the run up to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, I am thrilled to be diving into a fascinating topic today around what's next in telehealth and telesurgery, telemedicine with a true innovator and expert thought leader from Ericsson. Misha, how are you?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for being here. Such an important and timely topic here. But before that, you're such an interesting person and have such a fascinating background. Tell us about your journey to your work today and a little bit about your sort of biography.
Right. Okay. How much time do you have? Anyway, let's make that very quick. I wanted to become a concert pianist, actually. I was enrolled in the conservatory. I chickened out in the end and went into physics. I actually got a physics degree, then ended up in telecoms. It's a long story. Did my PhD at King's College in London, then worked in France Telecom in France for a few years, then went to Barcelona and built my very first company there, IoT company, World Sensing, one of the biggest European B2B companies in IoT. Was then reappointed at King's College in London, and then Ericsson hired me into Silicon Valley. I'm now vice president of emerging tech here in the Valley.
Wow, so you packed a lot into a short introduction. But let's dive into the topic that you're obsessed with, as am I these days: telehealth, telesurgery. Rapidly growing areas of interest post-pandemic, in particular. And you have a unique point of view here, both as a industry insider, but also a technologist and researcher. What's the big opportunity, the big challenge that you're dealing with when it comes to these telehealth
Yeah.
topics?
That's a great question. I got very passionate about the topic in London when, in the early 5G era, when everybody was trying to build, modems and cables and antennas. I said, hey, wait a second. Let's first figure out what actually people in industry would need in the year 2020 when 5G will be released. So I went out to different verticals and started to talk to them, really telling them, hey, asking them, if you had that tech, what could you do differently to what you do today? And that was about 2012. So I engaged with loads of verticals, and one of them was health. So I started work with Prakhar Gupta. He's one of our leading surgeons in one of the 4 hospitals which King's owned back then. And this is where my passion really ignited, where I realized that bringing technology in the healthcare, specifically 5G and healthcare together, is a real opportunity. And we focused on surgery. The reason is, people ask me, why did you focus on surgery or telesurgery? And I thought, that's a very hard nut to crack. If you manage to solve that problem, then all the other issues kind of fall in place. So we started to work on that. Turns out that, telesurgery is really needed in a lot of cases, such as heart attacks, strokes. The right surgical skills is not within driving distance. So the normal way of doing that would be with fiber, and fiber will always be there as a connectivity, but we need very, very high reliability. So you don't want the network to go in outage as the operation goes on. And we have all experienced fiber outage, and this is where 5G comes in. So 5G is a great backup option, and actually it's also a cheaper option if somebody can't really afford the dedicated fiber to have 1 or 2 5G lines to enable that surgery. So that is the story I drove back then in London, and we did a little demo at Mobile World Congress, and I think you covered it. Actually, you were one of the.
I was there. I remember.
Yeah, you
It
were
seemed
there.
like science fiction. It was Star Trek type material at the time.
Right. Yeah, my team did great work there. We just did that with Ericsson, and now I'm in the US, and I'm really working now with the hospitals here, with leading surgeons, with the FDA, with robotic surgery companies. It's coming together. Everything takes time, as you know, but we know there's a business case. We know we can really help families and even the healthcare system, and we're now making make it happen technically.
Wonderful. And you're sort of the ultimate example of industry, cross-industry collaboration. Your career spans academia, industry, obviously, the arts. How do you build collaboration across, the industry for this initiative? And what's the role not just of a company like Ericsson, but government, academia, third party, startups and innovators. How are you bringing this all together?
That's a great question, and I don't think I have the recipe to do that. I'll tell you how I do it, and it worked pretty well. So I think the key to my engagement was always to truly listen and try to understand the lingo of the industry I deal with. And I do remember I organized a 2-day workshop between my tech folks and the arts folks at the National Theatre. And the first day was a real disaster because nobody could really understand what we're saying to each other. But then we developed that common language and that understanding. We started to build trust. And from then we started also to disrupt that art scene with our telco capabilities. And the same in the medical sector. So I spent a lot of time listening, truly listening, trying to understand what do they need, what really makes sense to the healthcare providers and to the surgeons. So that's number one. Second thing is really to bring everybody together at executive level to really get to understand, who's really in command. And I think one problem maybe in our 5G industries, we've been trying, to sell into schools, universities, and hospitals, and you name it, but it was always into the IT department. And of course, the IT department just listens to what the healthcare provider and the surgeons actually need. So they don't really have a leverage except for doing procurements. And I understand if you go to the top of the chain and work with these folks, they understand the value of 5G and connectivity. And then it is much easier to engage with the IT departments and get essentially that connectivity and the digital transformation of healthcare going.
Oh, it's a wonderful thought. And we've all been involved in the journey to 5G, from 3G to 4G. I started in paging. I don't know, maybe that's 0G, but we're finally here, and it has taken more time than we would have liked.
Mhm.
But what's next for 5G and some of the advanced architectures? It is exciting that it's real here where I am in Boston. Boston Children's Hospital has rolled out private 5G, leveraging actually Ericsson and T-Mobile business. But where are we with state of the art and what's next?
You're right. We had a hope that 5G would move much quicker, specifically the true 5G, right? The 5G standalone architecture, which is where we can really do all the advanced use cases such as slicing, low latency, and you name it. And, we are now starting to roll it out. And, usually it is related to a business case. So when you have a business case really for the operators to invest, they will do it. So there's no lack of willingness to do it. It's just a business case was lacking. So we're getting now we're initially in a bit of a chicken egg situation, but I think now the industry starts to see real value from a slicing point of view, something we've dreamt of now maybe 15 years, right? And so it's now we're starting to see the real value, not least with the specific enterprise use cases. And it's not only health, it's mission critical, you name it. There are a lot of use cases which would really benefit from a dedicated sliced architecture, but also consumer use cases. And in the end of the day, the operators really run a consumer B2C business. So therefore, if the likes of Apple for iOS or Google for Android, start to see value to introduce that slicing that's happening right now, then we're on a winning streak. So we're rolling this out now. The SA architecture now is becoming, really commonplace in the US and in other parts of the world. What we're now looking for is, maybe you asked what's next, right? So a lot of features still need to be introduced. As you know, it takes a while between standardization and actually getting it to product portfolio and then getting it actually deployed. So there are several stages still to be done. We've just released release 18 product portfolio, 11 features were released. So therefore, this is coming now into the portfolio, and we will continue doing this. More release 18 features, release 19 features at some point will come in. So they're often refinements, so making things better, whether that is localization algorithms, whether these are slicing capabilities, radio capabilities. But really, at the crux of it all is to get the monetization of the business case right. So that's really what we need to crack as a telco ecosystem. As you know, we're all engineers, we're really good engineers, and we're not always that good in actually formulating a viable business proposition. So therefore, that's something we're learning at the moment. Of course, the API story helps us there quite a lot.
Yes, opening the network to developers, so exciting. And just as we get our hands around 5G, we have 6G. And speaking of technologists, they're kind of leading the charge in terms of new radios and all kinds of new radio interfaces. Where are you on 6G? Do you see this as exciting as it looks? And what might be some of the use cases or applications that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think nobody has the crystal ball to know really how the future will play out. However, what we have learned from the past is that at every generation, there were a lot of loud voices saying we don't need a new generation. And there are a lot of loud voices saying we do need a new generation. With hindsight, we always did need a new generation. So my working assumption is that we are not yet at a kind of converged level of Jesus. You know, some people claim traffic is still growing, right? It is. The rate may not increase, but the traffic itself is growing. We are at a capacity with telecom, and you experience that every day when you use your mobile phone. You know, it's not that we don't know how to engineer these systems, it's just we're literally at spectrum capacity. So therefore, 6G will happen as long as we get the spectrum. So that is really a necessary condition for that. And as you know, we're really after the mid-band spectrum, and you know every region is a bit different. But here in the US, we are really after the 7 to 8 gig band, and you know maybe a little bit higher, the 10 gig. So we call it FR3, frequency range 3. It has a lot of challenges, but I think from an RF point of view, from a signal processing point of view, we can do that. So let's assume we have done it. Now, then what we will have done in 6G is we got more capacity, and you know we are now able to serve use cases we struggle with today, as well as new use cases. But the more interesting question to me, Evan, is what new capabilities come in, and one of the capabilities we really talk about a lot is integrated sensing and communication. ISAC. So that is something quite sweet, something we have not done before, where we use mobile comms as both the technology to communicate radio waves, which carry a voice traffic or video traffic, but also use it as a radar, because the physics, the Maxwell equations underpinning is exactly the same. So that's a use case. We have better localization. Maybe we'll have, other capabilities there. But overall, we realized, let's make it simple. We will not have in 6G a standalone, non-standalone. It should be, a standalone straight off the books. We need the spectrum, a lot more AI in there, intent-based automation, smart networks, self-adapting networks. Just make the operations design and the actual deployment so much easier than it is today.
Fascinating. Well, it's an amazing time to be a technologist for sure. And you sit in an interesting place in Ericsson in emerging technology. What's your philosophy about getting technology from the lab to commercial reality? The old days of pure research, maybe sadly are gone, but it's still an exciting world in terms of research and development. How do you think about that world these days?
It's a great question. It's really a great question, because I've lived in each of these bubbles for such a long time. And academia clearly still has a great role in educating and inspiring students and kids. I maintain this will be there, and we have had academia for 800 years. It's difficult to imagine it will disappear even in this age of AI. However, the goalposts have shifted quite a bit now. And one of the reasons I actually left my full tenured professorship position at King's College London to join industries, because I felt that industry now has more impact. There are more resources. There's more funding, really smart people, and it's kind of the right ingredient to move the needle. And that's really what I wanted to do. That's why I joined industry. And, it's a challenge nonetheless. We see now that a lot of research is being accelerated through AI in different ways. We can do things quicker, more efficient, ask questions we weren't able to ask before, get answers to these. So therefore, we see acceleration in research output. Now, the big challenge is how do you impedance match that with the development cycles, right? So something we took before maybe years to do, we would need to start new programs almost every day because people come up with new great ideas every day. So my role here and our role here in Silicon Valley is here with my colleagues is to make sure that everything we see, we kind of funnel that. We try to understand what's really important to our portfolio mid to long term. And then we bring that to the actual machinery, which then does, all the patent work, as well as the actual implementation into the portfolio. And, I cherish that role. I learn a lot from our portfolio guys. The majority sits, of course, in Sweden, and they tell us, that's possible, not possible. Then we come along and say, try this, and, have you paid attention to that? And that is a dialogue which we are strengthening, which is growing. And I think it's a great work stream of mine. I really love that.
Wonderful. That sounds so fun, thrilling. So you've had so much success in so many fields. Any advice for the young kids out there, high school, college age, who are making decisions about what to study and how and what fields to enter? Meanwhile, AI is disrupting everything, potentially even the world of software engineering. How do you give advice in this time? It must be a challenge.
Yeah, it's very challenging. Yeah, I have two daughters. One is about to graduate high school, going to college. So it's almost 18 and 17 years old girls.
Perfect.
And we're having these discussions, of course, also, with my wife, who is, also in the kind of tech innovation sector at Stanford. And we're discussing very frequently on what's next. And I think, the most important thing is just to upskill, but not upskill yourself to the point where you spend all the time just trying to learn what's the latest in AI, because it's a never-ending journey. So new stuff is being fired out now at the level of what we call singularity, where new things are just coming quicker than we can even absorb. So therefore, focus it around get the basics, and then focus it around a use case. So if, as an example, my daughter has a certain issue, problem, idea, really try to get hands-on as quickly as possible. Go out of the PowerPoint mode, go out of the dreaming mode, go get hands-on. There's actually almost nothing you cannot do these days, because between all these LLMs, you have tutors everywhere to tell you how to build things, how to reach audiences, how to build your brand, how to make an impact in the world. So I don't see AI as a threat. I see it as an accelerant, as a real opportunity. And as long as you know how to leverage it, I think you're on a winning streak there.
Great advice. I guess last question, what's next? What are you excited about over the next weeks, months? You have so much going on. What are you looking forward to, you and the team?
Yeah, so we I'm always looking out for the next thing in emerging tech, whether that is next quantum, and quantum really surprised us. You will have heard Microsoft topological qubit. I knew it was cooking. I knew from the lead scientists they'd done half of it, but they actually developed now the chip, which is super exciting. Still evaluating what it means to us as an industry. Blockchain, I've been traditionally very interested in, and I'm sitting now on top of solutions which scale, wildly, well beyond what the current infrastructure can do. So that becomes quite useful to quite a lot of use cases, which potentially telecom is also implied with. And then, everything around AI, Gen AI, what's the next thing? Can we use it to design networks, design RF? I had this vision in 2018 when the Transformers just came out. I called it self-synthesizing networks, where you would AI to not only optimize and operate networks, but actually design networks. So can we do that? So that's one bubble. The other bubble is actually much closer to market. We are working with any big Silicon Valley company you can imagine to integrate their gadgets into our 5G infrastructure. And there's some really cool stuff going to hit the market soon. I'm very, very excited about this. And last but not least, I'm really involved in a lot of policy, techno-policy. As you know, I sit on the board of the Spectrum board of Ofcom. I'm sitting on one of the advisory committees of the FCC, working a lot with Princeton. So a lot of policy work, trying to get the healthcare sector, kind of disrupted and digitized. A lot of different work streams here I'm very excited about.
I bet. Well, so much happening. And folks, you must follow Misha on LinkedIn and sign up to his newsletter to really keep on top of his work. So fascinating. Thanks so much for joining and sharing an update, Misha.
Thanks, Evan, for having me. It's great talking to you as usual.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for listening, watching. See you at Mobile World Congress. Take care.